On today's show, San Antonio Spurs young star in the making, Victor Wembanyama, has lived up to the hype so far through a couple preseason games, how he's dominating on both sides of the basketball floor. And hey, can the Spurs actually be a competitive team this season? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, you shouldn't have to worry when you're trying to buy tickets to the next big event that you're planning on attending. I know I've had problems in the past with other ticketing apps where I go, through the whole checkout process and I'm getting right at the end and I go to punch in my information and it all disappears or there's errors and it can be a really clunky, frustrating experience. That's not the case with Game Time. Game Time is incredibly easy to use. And look, they've got last minute tickets, flash deals, all sorts of stuff that you want to be able to take advantage of in the app. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, whether it's sports, music, comedy shows, theater events. They have it all with Game Time. You get views from all the seats in the venue, so you know exactly the type of bang that you're getting for the buck that you are spending. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and so much more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Joining us now is the host of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Richard Stayman. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. Just search Locked On NBA Big Board. Richard, here to talk a little bit about what we've seen out of Victor Wembanyama through a couple Spurs preseason games, all the hype, all the buildup, and we saw it on display for a couple brief games in Summer League. We've got a couple preseason games now under our belt. Bit of a different vibe, different atmosphere than NBA Summer League, going up against legitimate NBA competition, not the fringe players that may or may not make the league. And so far, I think the hype is warranted. I mean, Wemby looks really good through a couple games here. Lay out the picture, the stats against the Thunder and then against the Miami Heat for these first couple games for the Spurs. He had 20 points, 5 boards, and a couple steals, as well as a block on 8 of 13 shooting against the Thunder. And then he followed that up with a 23 4-4 performance with 3 blocks on 10 of 15 shooting versus the Miami Heat. He's been pretty sensational in these first couple games.
Yeah, it's been everything I think we thought we'd see at Summer League. It's funny. Everybody said, don't overreact to Summer League, but a lot of the same people are it feels like overreacting, right, to this in the opposite way, because in Summer League, people are like, ooh, is he ready? And then now they're like, okay, yep, top 50, put him there, whatever. And I really do think if we're leaning towards one overreaction, doing it against the NBA players, right? He had a play against Miami. He's just so phenomenal on both ends. He controlled the defense in Summer League, and he's going to do that again in the NBA. There's a play against Miami where he had 2 people in the paint. He locks up one guy. The other, they're 2 bigs, right? One of them was Thomas Bryant, is open because Wembanyama is committed to the other big on the other side of the paint. And Bryant thinks he has an open shot. Wembanyama just stuffs him. And it's that kind of stuff where it's unprecedented levels of both defense, finishing, honestly, all 3 of, and then shooting too. Just that ability at that size is unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, he's blocking shots and defending the rim from multiple feet away from the rim, which you're not really as accustomed to, right? You're thinking if the shot blocker is right there at the cup, then okay, danger zone. But he's getting to shots. He's getting to defensive stops and plays that no other NBA player can actually achieve. And it's stuff that we really haven't seen happening before. And then even offensively, there was that play where he dunked over Thomas Bryant. Not momentum headed towards the basket, not like he was, going downhill and he took a jump and it carried him towards the rim. He's literally standing and off vertical, just reaches over Thomas Bryant from outside of the restricted area, under the basket and just dunks over the top of him. And you see there was a fan in the stands, I think, who was recording the play, and you see Thomas Bryant's face, and he just turns to the bench, and he's like got this face like, oh my God, what do I do? How do I defend that? It's been a lot that we've seen in these first couple games. To you, Richard, what is going to be kind of his biggest adjustment? I mean, he very much looks NBA ready, but there's got to be something, a chink in the armor, if you will, the thing that's going to give him the most trouble going from, what he's used to playing against to the NBA competition.
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, it's really just that shooting consistency. I think we all know he's somebody that can shoot the ball. You watch him shoot, it looks effortless at his size, but he still was a pretty subpar shooter over in Europe. But it's just a win, not if. I mean, he's one of the few players I've ever seen that's 7 foot or taller than their pre-draft free throw percentage, which is the strongest indication for shooting upside, to shoot 80+% at the line. And that's really promising because he does off the dribble shooting. But I think it's going to be that just consistency and stretching the floor and really making teams, they already have had issues in preseason deciding, do we stop the roll or do we stop the pop? And making that a 50-50 where he kills you just as equally on both. I think that's going to be where the efficiency is a struggle for him from three.
And what do you think about the decision of him basically playing the 4 at this point, right? The Spurs are committed to, they're going to run a 5 next to him pretty much at all times. We might see moments with him as the 5 on the floor. But so far I thought that was the smart decision, right? Coming into the NBA landscape, things are going to be a little bit more physical for him right out of the gate. And you're kind of seeing the benefits. He's able to, especially offensively, he plays like a wing already on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, shades to 1997 when they did the exact same thing with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, right? Where eventually Duncan became the center, but they can afford to have that center next to him. I think, and Popovich was the coach. I think that's something that they could really just recreate very successfully. And on offense, the big thing too is, like, as long as the center is mobile enough on defense, it shouldn't matter what they do offensively, because Wembanyama is so unique at his size that you can throw anybody next to him as a center. It could be a pure finisher. It could be somebody that wouldn't, be able to really hold their own on defense, but can really score in the post in limited minutes. They can shine a lot brighter because of Wembanyama.
And what made that first matchup so special is we actually got to see kind of the two projected, finalists, head-to-head guys for the Rookie of the Year award this season in Wemby and Chet Holmgren go up against each other. And that matchup was really interesting, just watching those two guys kind of go head-to-head a little bit. And they're going to be neck and neck this entire season for the Rookie of the Year award. So many people are ready to just anoint Victor Rookie of the Year right out of the gate, Richard. But I think that it's going to be a legitimate battle between Chet and Victor this season for who actually walks away with that award.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Wembanyama. I think we're going to see just an extreme jump of wins from the Spurs going from extreme lottery to play-in team. I think that alone, and then you're going to see just ridiculous stats. Like I really do think we're on track to see. I don't want to exaggerate here, but and hyperbolize this, but I mean, we are on pace to see like another player who can, they'll put it lightly, who can replicate what Giannis does. I think we're about to see the closest upside player to that, where it's that 30 points a game, 10 plus rebounds, 5 assists. He's getting blocks. He's playing lights out defense. We're on track for that. And I think it's going to start with the Rookie of the Year campaign for Wembanyama.
So, and that was actually my final thing here. Is there a world where you're starting to see, and it's preseason, you take it with a grain of salt, obviously all of that, but is there a world where the Spurs, everybody has the Spurs to just be pegged as a bad team again this year? Is there a world where the Spurs are actually competitive, and it's because Wemby is just so singularly talented that he elevates them defensively and he does enough and provides enough production offensively? And then you've also got pieces like Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan taking another step this season. Yep. I think there's maybe a world where the Spurs aren't just like the bottom feeders of the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Vassell is a guy that got a hefty bag because they expect him to take a jump. And when you have him, you have some solid role players to go there as well. I think you got to look at like what the Magic did this year, right? Granted, they started 5-25. They were still the last team eliminated for the playoffs. And I think if that team was able to do that, I think the Spurs have a higher upside, right? And just in year one, I can't see them being dissimilar. And that Orlando Magic team was a team that honestly, especially in the 2023 portion of the calendar, they really gave everyone trouble. At a minimum, that is San Antonio's baseline this year, assuming health.
And not to mention, they are a Greg Popovich coached team, and somehow the Popovich coached teams always seem to surprise each and every year.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember the random lineups they would throw out on a Wednesday and still win against some of the best teams in the league.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a ton of fun to monitor and watch. How will the San Antonio Spurs progress this season? And of course, you'll have us covered for check-ins on Victor Wembanyama throughout his rookie season, all of that and so much more over at Locked On NBA Big Board. Richard, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thank you.